you have arrived for at least a few days. This is Friday night. Who's here for the weekend? Woo! All right, so who's here for the week? Woo! Awesome. So everyone here is officially checking out from having real life, and so you can relax. You've made it to vacation land. You've also made it into the most controversial business in the entire Northwoods of Wisconsin. So there's always stress happening here, but there's also a safe place for people who lean left and are progressive, and that's not so common in this part of Wisconsin. So
just in time, we're doing our tasting.
Come on in, everyone. We're doing a beer tasting, and it's a camp meeting. And by the time I get you drunk, if you're not voting blue already, you will in November.
We need this after last night.
You can always sit here if you want. We're doing the tasting right here if you want, or whatever. So this is how we do it. I pour all the beers out. We give you a sample of all the beers. And I might go out of order with your palates because the story is more important than the beer palate. So just don't knock me on that, okay? Because if it goes from an IPA back to a lighter beer, that's the story. That's not the actual way to go. So I'm Kirk Bangstad. I own this place. In 2020, I owned a place about 2 football fields over this way. And it's still there. It was the old Minocqua Brewing Company. And in June of 2020, and you pour Biden beer, please, Ron. By the way, this is Ron, the most interesting man in the world. There's lots more stories about Ron coming. And by the way, the honking can sometimes be people flicking us off. And so we have a T-shirt here that says Minocqua Brewing Company Bird Watching Society, and it's got a guy in a MAGA hat without a tooth that's flicking somebody off. And sometimes the honk is that, or sometimes it's somebody who's encouraging to us. But it's always one or the other. There's nobody just honks randomly as they go by. So in 2020, in June, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats passed the second round of PPP financing for all of America. And that was perfect because the Minocqua Brewing Company, every place in northern Wisconsin, only makes money for 4 months out of the year. So that second round was the perfect time to supplement the first round because I had spent all that money keeping my employees employed, even though we had no business because restaurants had no business during COVID. So that second round of financing came at the perfect time, but guess who denied that second round? Mitch McConnell, who led the Republicans in the U.S. Senate. And the reason he denied that second round of financing would be, to approve it, would have been to call Donald Trump a liar. Because Donald Trump was saying that COVID was covered, we were good, we were over it, it wasn't a problem anymore. Which was a complete lie. But Mitch McConnell, because he was a spineless turd, kept with the lie. And so he denied that second round of PPP financing for all breweries, tap rooms, bars, and restaurants in the entire country. And since in this area of Wisconsin, you only make money for 4 months out of the year, I started telling all my employees, if they don't pass that financing by September, I'm going to have to go out of business. I'm going to have to lay you all off. So come September, that didn't pass, and so I laid everybody off. But I figured if I'm going to go out of business, I'm going to go bankrupt. But boy, this is the first time. I'm a white guy. I'm Harvard educated. This is the first time in my life that I got personally fucked by my own government. I'm usually on the other side, like a white guy, well-educated, usually is the one that gets all the benefits. So this is the first time in my life I felt the repercussions of just something gone terribly wrong. And so I got really mad, and I put up a huge Biden sign against that restaurant over there. I had it custom made, and I said, if I'm going to go out of business, it doesn't matter who I impress anymore. It doesn't matter that I'm in the reddest part of northern Wisconsin. If I'm going out of business anyways, I'm going to say what I feel. And what I felt was that brewers have to rely on science in order to make good beer. And so I wasn't even being partisan at that point. I'm like, I'm voting for Joe Biden because he's the only one who's actually caring about the science of COVID right now. And science matters. And you have to believe in science if you're going to try to create healthcare policy. So we hung the Biden sign, and within 2 days, my county sent me a letter and said, your sign is too big, and we're going to fine you $250 a day until you take your sign down. And has anybody seen a big Trump sign before? In Wisconsin.
Yeah.
All over the place. And so my response to that was, there's no way. By the way, the real response that I didn't know at the time was in 2015 in a lawsuit called Reed versus Town of Gilbert in Arizona. The Supreme Court ruled that you can't regulate the size of political signs. But that's a violation of First Amendment. I didn't even know that at the time. What I did know is that I was pissed off that they were treating me differently than they taught all the other redneck folks with hanging Trump signs. So I said, here's a link to my. You can pour choice, by the way, if everybody's still. Everybody's still drinking.
No.
So here's a link. Here's a link. Yeah, pour everybody is empty. Here's a link to all of my T-shirts. And if anybody wants to help me pay a $250 fine for 30 days, because it was 30 days before the election, it was going to be $8,500. I was like, if anybody wants to help me pay these fines, here's a link to buy my T-shirts. And by the way, while we're at it, let's raise another $8,500. And I'll give that to whoever runs against my county board representative. So I sold about $100,000 worth of T-shirts in 4 days. Because nobody could believe that they were treating me differently. And so that completely changed this company. So that $100,000 and we went from 11,000 Facebook followers to like 30 in like 1 week. And so once that happened, we got on the map. And then the second thing that happened, and why I'm pouring Biden beer but you're drinking choice, the second thing that happened was my beer was getting skunky. And so when we closed down and shut and when Biden won, I told my brewer to do this, to put a sticky note, like basically on my crawlers and call it Biden beer. And let's sell Biden beer. I said, Biden beer is inoffensive and not bitter.
Sure.
And because Biden wasn't my first choice, I don't think he was probably your first choice. But he was inoffensive and not bitter, like a good Kolsch. And I said, it's best consumed with the temperature taken way down, and it won't overstay its welcome in your fridge. So people came from all over the Midwest to this crazy little place that I had, and they wanted Biden beer. Not because it was in a cool little can, they wanted this, which was just a little sticky thing. So that, and it got into Hill.com, and it made national news that we were coming out with Biden beer, and so they put this place on the map. So that's why we pour Biden beer first, because without Biden beer, I would be bankrupt today. So that's the reason you drink it. Now, we moved on to choice already, and this is going to, I write an essay every Sunday. Sometimes I'm way too verbose on Facebook, but yeah, really. So this was supposed to be Biden beer, but Biden had the Afghanistan thing had happened, inflation was happening, and Manchin and Sinema, our Democratic senators who weren't really Democratic, were voting against every possible thing we were doing about 2 years ago, and I didn't think I could sell Biden beer anymore because I wasn't even that happy with what was going on with the Democrats. Like, how could we get all this power? How could we just vote in all these Democrats and still not get anything done? I was furious. Right around that time, the Supreme Court was arguing the Dobbs case. And you heard Alito, you knew that Roe v. Wade was going to get overturned. And so I was like, I don't think I can sell Biden anymore, but I'm really pissed off about losing reproductive rights. And so we created this brand called Choice. So, which is, we got the H and the O as a female sign, and you can't see it here, but we've got different, this little collar thing is Ruth Bader Ginsburg's collar, is this little doily thing around here. And we made this beer first, and it was a Kolsch, because in manufacturing, you got to choose the brewer before you can label it. So I chose against Biden then, and this is the worst beer I've ever sold. Nobody bought this beer because nobody got it. And if you think about it, the people who are caring most about reproductive rights are women, and women drink less beer than men. So this was a bad move on my part. And the reason I mention this now is that Biden gave a mediocre at best debate performance last night, but just like this Kolsch, I bet against Biden before, and then he started passing the infrastructure bill. He started passing the CHIPS Act. He started coming back at Marjorie Taylor Greene during the State of the Union address. And so, to me, one performance of a president in a debate does not define what they've done in their administration. But also, and I will continue to harp on this, is our mainstream media loves to have a narrative that suggests that Biden is too old to run for office. But 80% of that is Biden's too old for office. 20% of the narrative was Trump told bald-faced lies the entire time. And what's wrong with our media that focuses on is it worse to be old than to be a fascist? That's my question. Because I don't think it is. I don't think it is worse to be old. Unless you have dementia and you press a nuke button by accident, that's the only time it's worse to be old than it is to be a fascist. So our mainstream media screwed it up. I bet against Biden 2 years ago when I made this beer, and he might be old, but I'm not going to bet against him before. I'm going to be 100% supportive. Okay, let's pour. Long-winded Bangstad goes again. Let's pour Love Wins. So the story of this. I only talk about the beers that I'm actually pouring, but there's been many different incarnations of choice. We've made seltzer, and I also, because women care more about reproductive rights than men, obviously, I made a wine, and that's going to come. That's going to come on Monday. We have a choice line of wines: Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, and Chardonnay, that are made by a company called Equality Vines in Sonoma, California. And I was doing a beer tasting in Evanston, Illinois, and somebody talked to me. They said, there's a winery out there that's just as progressive as you, and they do cause-based wine. And I was like, that's awesome. So they introduced me to these guys, and I said, do you guys want to make my choice label and make wine of it? They said, sure. One of the owners of that winery is Jim Obergefell. And if anybody here is a lawyer or an aspiring lawyer or a history buff, Jim Obergefell is a named plaintiff in the Supreme Court case called Obergefell v. Hodges, which had happened in 2016, and Jim Obergefell won that case, and it gave us marriage equality for all Americans. Marriage equality for those who aren't versed in marriage in like the proper lingo. Gay people are allowed to get married now because of that decision. And so Jim Obergefell is a gay man in Ohio whose partner was dying, and because Ohio's laws were so strict, he was not able to visit him at the end of his life. He was not able to sign any of the documents that need to be signed when you're dying. And so you have to have a heart of absolute stone to think that somebody who loves somebody else can't be there at the end of their lives. And that's why this case was so successful. And so Jim Obergefell won, and the hashtag for that is Love Wins. That's happened. That was Love Wins. And so their winery started off with Love Wins. And so he owns this. He's part owner of this winery, and they have a champagne called Love Wins. And it was like a big celebration, like a champagne should be, or a sparkling wine. So they gave me a choice wine, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and I gave them a fruited sour that they sell in their tap room in Sonoma, in Guerneville, California, which is in Sonoma County. So the funny thing is, this is my pride beer, and the funny thing is I was like, guys, fruited sours are very popular right now. It's like the yogurt of beers. It's like healthy bacteria, makes it tart like sourdough bread. But I have one question. You're a gay-owned brewery. and the word fruity is often used in a bad way against you guys. I just want to make sure it's okay. This is a fruited sour. Like, if you're gonna make a gay beer, you better fucking make it fruity. So so I'm clear. I'm clear with those guys. So this is my pride beer, and it's our sour, and that's why it should have gone here, because it's like not. Your palate is not loving it right now from these others, but that's why I tell the story. Choice and love wins go hand in hand. Right? Cheers to that. Cheers to pride. We're still in it, right? End of June. By the way, we ran out. I just brought 15 cases today of this, so this is as fresh as it humanly gets. It just was canned yesterday, so it's really fresh. So now we're going to move to labor lager. So now we're going to go a little bit like as it should go in terms of your taste buds. So this is our lightest beer we're currently doing. It's labor lager. We did it because the Teamsters won a historic battle in UPS. The United Auto Workers Union won a historic. Labor has actually done wonders for their movement in the last 2 years. So that's why we made this beer. But while he's pouring it, what's more important than the labor, what's not more important, but part of the story is when we started doing Biden beer, I didn't want to just, and I was fighting the town and the county, I didn't want to just put politicians' names on cans. I wanted to have a mission-driven company that not only just sold beer, but used some of the profits of that beer to try to keep Wisconsin blue. Because Wisconsin is we're one of probably the 3 most important states to make sure that America doesn't fall into a dictatorship or into fascism. So I figured if I'm already going to be this out and progressive, I might as well try to do something. So we started a super PAC called the Minocqua Brewing Company Super PAC. And so a percentage of all the sales of everything you see here goes to the super PAC. And we raised money through it, and we raised about $1.6 million, on average $40 per donation. So it's about as grassroots as it comes. And we've done everything. We've sued to get Donald Trump off of the ballot. When Colorado got him off the ballot, I immediately called my lawyer, Fred. I'm like, we're doing that too. So we sued to get him off the ballot. Obviously, that didn't work. And we've done a lot of things. If you go to my bathroom, you'll see some of the signs we put up against Ron Johnson and Tom Tiffany. So has anybody donated to Super PAC that's here? Well, shame on you all. So that's the Super PAC is our political wing, and we're very active to try to keep Wisconsin blue. Most recently, we put signs that say "No," like instead of "hope," and we put Donald Trump with a red nose in the most. I love that. Oh, we put this sign downtown Milwaukee, and the the Marquette interchange, right for the RNC convention, to greet all of the crazy people that are coming to Milwaukee to worship their king. We made sure that. We said, and it says not in Milwaukee there, and then on your way up, if you came up from Madison on Highway 51, you might have seen another billboard that says in Tomahawk, because there's thousands of people coming for the holiday week. It says not in Wisconsin. There's another billboard on the way up here. We're going to put them everywhere in northern Wisconsin because the Democratic Party doesn't really play in northern Wisconsin anymore. And unfortunately, people donate to my Super PAC because I do. I all of my stuff is in the reddest part of Wisconsin, and I fight even though I know I'm going to lose. I still fight because somebody needs to keep fighting up here. So that's labor lager. This is a great story. The next one, let's pour Tammy Shandy. So Tammy Shandy is obviously for our Senator Tammy Baldwin. She's running for re-election this year. I'll tell you a story that should make you vote for her regardless if you're a Republican or Democrat, because she was really pro-business here. I don't know if she actually was. I'll tell you a story. So when I started we started distributing in Illinois and Minnesota, and in order to get your beer outside of state lines, you have to get your labels approved by a federal agency called the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Trade Bureau. And so we submitted all our labels with Biden's face on it. We had Bernie Brew, which I don't have any more of, but we had Bernie Brew, we had AOC IPA, we had Kamala. And so what I've learned about government, if you're not a politician and basically a bureaucrat, you get into that job because it's a paycheck that will never go away. And I'm a Republican a little bit on this side because a lot of government work is let's just cover our ass and get through it so we can go play volleyball later or something. So which should be a job. A job should be a job. But anyways, this TTB agent, some low-level federal agent, wrote back. He just covered his ass because he's never seen the picture of the president before on a beer label. And he's like, conditional approval for all of these labels that have these politicians on it, as long as you have a letter of approval from the politician on the label. I was like, so when we got that letter back, I'm like, you just killed my entire business model. There's no way I'm going to get a letter of approval from Biden. So what I did was I picked up the phone and I called Tammy Baldwin's office, who's my U.S. senator, and I was like, guys, do you guys know anybody who works for Bernie or Biden or AOC? And can I get a letter? Can you help me get a letter? And they laughed me almost off the phone because they're like, that's the most ridiculous request we've ever heard. But we understand your problem and we'll think about it. We'll see what we can do. So within a week of me calling, Kamala Harris has a dinner for all the female senators in the United States, and Tammy brings a 4-pack of Kamala as a gift from Wisconsin, and that was written about in Politico magazine, so there's proof of it that it happened. And then a little bit later, there's some other event where she's with Bernie, and she brings Bernie a 4-pack of Bernie Brew as a gift from Wisconsin. And I think Pocan was another congressman brought AOC her 4-pack from Wisconsin. And so my lawyers are like, Kirk, this is a gift from God. So because they're like as long as, so we wrote a letter. They said we had to have a letter. So our letter said, we have given all of our beer to the people that are on the labels and as gifts from Wisconsin. And since they haven't sued us yet, they've given us tacit approval to use their names. And so that guy was trying to cover his ass, and so we covered our ass, and we've been able to do it ever since. So because of that, we gave Tammy a beer for the rest of her life. So she gets a shandy, which we make every summer, and hopefully it'll help her, help grocery store shelves and help everybody remember that she's way better than her opponent, who is really a Californian named Hobby, and he won't even divest his shares in his California bank if he gets elected. So Tammy will win this race. She probably will get more votes than Biden, unfortunately, but that's our beer for Tammy Baldwin. Okay, so we're doing this is our red. So by the way, Grateful Fred Red Ale and Extinct Elephant are the same beer, but Grateful Fred's my lawyer who sued Trump. Extinct Elephant was the beer we had before. Extinct Elephant's a funny one. It's a moderate red ale because there's no more moderate Republicans left in the Republican Party. We came up with this beer when right before 2022, when Governor Evers we were electing Evers, the gubernatorial race. So the goal was to put and by that at that stage. We had our beer in every single Woodman's in the state of Wisconsin. We had 100 retail stores in Wisconsin. And I was like, maybe we can convince a few Republicans who are tired of the chaos, they're tired of the lies. The Republican Party is not like it used to be. This elephant here is kind of wrinkled and old and's got glasses on. He doesn't look like a guy you really want to have a beer with. But this is the old Republican Party, where even if you don't like the guy so much, when it came down to saving America or saving Wisconsin, you were going to be able to go around a table and be able to communicate and be able to get things done and collaborate and make a few concessions. Just because you were more, you cared about your state more than your party, you cared about your country more than your party. So this is the old Republican that doesn't exist anymore. And so there's got to be some, we figured there's got to be some of those guys out there still left in Wisconsin. And so what we did, along with putting this beer out, we also put a sign that said, "Choose reason over treason," which is our flag that we're flying out there. We've got a huge thing in the beer garden. You can buy those flags. We put those signs up with Super PAC money all the way from West Bend all the way up to Marinette. So along Highway 41 or 43, and about 20 of those signs. It cost us about $25,000 right before the election. These were the billboards we had in grocery stores. The billboards we had where a lot of Republicans live in Wisconsin is north of West Bend and south of Marinette. And sure enough, I mean, I'm not saying it was because of us, but we were part of the huge amount of groups that, by the way, needed to get Evers elected because his opponent, Michaels, was repeating the lie that Trump told, that there was election malfeasance, that he really won Wisconsin, and he repeated the lie. And so if we would have elected a Republican governor, the same thing that they tried to do in 2020, they would try to do in 2024, because you know that if Trump loses, he's going to sue and try to win in Wisconsin. So, long story short, we put these signs up. Believe it or not, the MAGA movement is not they don't understand nuance very well. And so they boycotted, they called all the woodmans around the state of Wisconsin and said, "This Bangstad character is a domestic terrorist because he's calling for the extermination of all Republicans. Look at what it says on the can." And obviously that wasn't it. But just imagine a lowly person answering the phone at Woodman's. I mean, they don't want to fight my battles for me. So they took these didn't last very long on the shelves at Woodman's. And it's also possibly because this is what was on the back of the can. So we said, we made Extinct Elephant as a tribute to the historic and respectable Republican Party, which has now been poisoned from within by an anti-intellectual, anti-science, racist, homophobic, anti-democratic cult of personality. We hope that this great-tasting, moderate red ale helps inspire respectable conservative voters to revive their near-extinct GOP. So, might have been thank you. It might have been the first time that the word poison was used in the back of a beer can. Who knows? So, Evers got elected by more than 300,000 votes against Michaels. We saved Wisconsin for the first time. We needed to have that happen to save Wisconsin's democracy. Unfortunately, that same election, Mandela Barnes lost to Ron Johnson, who is a traitor to our country. No one can convince me else. He lost by 50,000 votes, which means that Democrats who voted for Evers did not vote for Mandela Barnes. One can only guess it's because he was black, which means that Wisconsin's got a lot of problems still. But at least our governor is a Democrat, and we can make sure that Trump can't screw with Wisconsin. Now, the next beer, let's pour Fair Maps. The second thing that had to happen in Wisconsin, was that after we got a governor elected who would stop craziness from happening, we also had to flip the balance of Wisconsin Supreme Court. And I'll tell you why. When Trump ran in 2020 and he lost in Wisconsin, he sued. He sued to overturn the will of Wisconsin's voters. Not only did he sue, but Texas sued us as well, if you remember that. And I only add that because there was one Republican congressman in Wisconsin that sided with Texas against his own state to overturn the same votes that got him elected. Guess who that congressman is? Tom Tiffany in northern Wisconsin, who's the biggest shill for Trump that exists. He is the Marjorie Taylor Greene of of Wisconsin. The guy will get a he will get a DACA on the coast of the Black Sea by Putin if Trump is elected and if we turn into a dictatorship. Tom Tiffany will be rewarded by Putin at some point. Anyways, when Trump tried to overturn the will of Wisconsin voters, if you remember, they did recounts 3 times. They recounted the vote 3 times to a couple $1 million. Every time they did the recount, Biden won by a few more votes, a few thousand more votes. So time after time after time, they did not prove that anything had been wrong in the election in Wisconsin. So Trump sued. There were 4 conservative justices in Wisconsin Supreme Court, and there were 3 progressive justices. Without a shred of evidence, 3 of those conservative justices sided with Trump to overturn the will of Wisconsin's voters. There's only one justice that stood in the way of screwing up the entire country, and his name was Brian Hagedorn. He was the one conservative justice that sided with looked at the evidence, or the lack of evidence. So I always say that I'm guessing he was visited by the ghost of Christmas future, like the day before he took that vote, because that ghost of Christmas future showed him that if he voted the wrong way, that there would be a constitutional crisis in America, there would be violence in California and New York and Illinois, because those 3 states make about 60% of our entire economy. They're not going to stand for some pipsqueak judge overturning the entire election. And so there's going to be violence, and there's going to be a civil war, there's going to be a constitutional crisis. And I honestly think, because Wisconsin was so pivotal, that one guy stood in the way of that. And nobody thinks about it that way because nobody talks about Wisconsin that much. So now, if you've listened to all that, you know how important it is that we get the majority of our Supreme Court to be progressive. And I don't even say progressive, but be not in the back pocket of Donald Trump. And so last April, there was a Supreme Court election. And we elected Janet Protasiewicz, and we flipped the balance of Wisconsin Supreme Court. That's why there was millions of dollars that were flooding Wisconsin, because that was the second line of protection that we had in our democracy, to hold on to our democracy in Wisconsin, which by extension holds on to our democracy in the rest of the country. So the reason I poured Fair Maps is that we've made a beer for them. It was called Lady Justice. That was a wheat beer last spring, but we're out of that. But the second most important thing that we did, because we flipped the court, was we got rid of gerrymandering in the state of Wisconsin. They just did that a few months ago, and we wouldn't have had that unless we had a progressive Supreme Court. And gerrymandering is everybody should know what that is. It's basically drawing lines, so ensuring that the Republican Party wins. Statewide elections have gone to Democrats for the last 5 years. Most every statewide election has gone to a Democrat except for Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. Yet, so that means that there are more Democrats in the state of Wisconsin than there are Republicans, empirically. But yet the Republican Party has 2/3 of our state assembly and 2/3 of our state senate, which means they have illegally gerrymandered our entire state, which means that if you want to get elected as a Republican, you have to be further right than some other guy who wants to be a Republican, and it separates the parties so that you're either too Democrat, you're too Republican, they can't talk to each other, and it screws up politics, and that's no longer going to happen. The next couple elections you're going to see more moderate Republicans and more moderate Democrats getting elected, and they're going to be able to work with each other only because we elected a progressive Supreme Court justice. So there you go. Okay. Opa! So here we go, Magateers. This is the only negative beer I put out so far, but I felt it had to be done. Everything else is uplifting, but this was just so fun for me. This is one of our newest beers. We came out with it a month ago. It's got Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Getz, and Lauren Bovert here hanging out. Lauren's got her AK-47 with her because she carries a gun wherever she goes. And they're all crying into a funnel that says their frustration brewed for your inebriation. So So let me read you the back because I find this particularly funny. Although the next batch of this I have to change because Lauren Boebert just won her primary, which I cannot believe. I cannot believe. But here's the story of MAGA Tears. Our new summer session IPA is made with the fermented laments of some truly frustrated politicians. Colorado's gun-toting Lauren Boebert, after a surveillance video showed her groping a man in unmentionable places before being kicked out of the musical Beetlejuice, faces an almost impossible re-election battle. Her bitter tears will help you get Rocky Mountain High. I'm so sad. We had to change the label. I'm making another batch because it's very popular. I got to change the label. Florida's pompadoured Matt Getz is currently being investigated for sex trafficking. And the chief witness against him, who pleaded guilty to the same charges, flipped on his old friend with the hopes of reducing his own 11-year sentence. Getz's tears add citrus notes, sweet like a Florida orange. Georgia's red-blazered and potty-mouthed Marjorie Taylor Greene, after giving tours to insurrectionists days before the January 6th attack on our country, and days later, and high-fiving those same domestic terrorists days later, has surely been included in Jack Smith's investigation into those who conspired with Donald Trump to overthrow the 2020 presidential election. Her tears add some hints of Georgia peach. Imagine reading this in the grocery store shelves. So, our new IPA will only get better with age, as the impending implosion of the MAGA movement will surely intensify the flavors that these organic tears add to the brew. There's usually more laughter along that, but we also watched the debate last night, which filled us all with fear. It filled us all with fear, and that's why I'm not laughing as much about what I just wrote, because I can't believe we're still dealing with this. We're still dealing with people who know nothing, anti-intellectual craziness, cults of personality. So, unfortunately, this doesn't ring as funny as it did yesterday. But I hope that it will still come true. The MAGA movement must end for our country to survive. So, the next beer I'm pouring is Dark Brandon. Yeah. This rings a little less humorous today as it did yesterday. But Dark Brandon is a play on words of what happened on the NASCAR racetrack about 3 years ago, when I won't hide my disdain for people that went to that NASCAR racetrack. They all started chanting "Fuck Joe Biden" in the stand. And, excuse me? And the announcer at that racetrack on like ESPN or something was so mortified at how just absolutely charmless an entire stadium of people were. Charmless. Thick, dumb, charmless, and mean, which has become almost half of our country, unfortunately, because of social media and because of Fox News, etc. He said that I can't let people know that's what they're actually saying, so he said, let's go by, they're encouraging this other driver named Let's Go Brandon. So they said, let's go Brandon, which became a joke that we all know. It's the most overused joke. You can still go to Rhinelander today and see a billboard, because I think they're trying to copy me, that says, let's go Brandon. And it's no longer that funny. But what was funny was every time that Biden would have like a correspondence dinner, or he had a State of the Union address and Marjorie Taylor Greene would shout something from the stands, he had always a pretty good response. And so there was a meme that started going around that was a joke on a joke on a joke that showed Biden's, being overtaken by the forces of superhuman forces, like lightning shine through his eyes. So obviously, Dark Brandon is the alter ego of Biden beer. So this was inoffensive and not bitter. Well, the opposite in beer form of inoffensive and not bitter is a stout with espresso in it. So this has got a lot. It's boozy. It'll keep you awake, and it's got a lot of character to it. So hopefully, Biden can channel this on the next debate, as opposed to that. I think it would make us all rest a little bit. All sleep a little bit more comfortably. Okay, so we're getting close to the end. I would normally talk about Kamala. By the way, I think I might have to make a bunch more of these. I'm not sure. I would normally talk about this can, but what I'm going to do while we're pouring it, it's our stout. It's Kamala. It says Kamala, which is funny. It also is terrible marketing because no bartender or distributor has ever said Kamala when they read that. So it loses the joke no matter what. But while we're pouring that, I wanted to talk a little bit about our American election is looming. We've talked about federal politics. We've talked about state politics, which in Wisconsin is ever important to national politics.
Yes.
But what I do want to talk about is local politics for a second. We in Minocqua, ever since I started this entity, we started doing progressive beer. My town and my county and the newspaper across the street. By the way, as an aside, the newspaper across the street is the most right-wing newspaper in Wisconsin. They're called the Lakeland Times. I call them the Westboro Baptist Church of Minocqua. He is one of the richest guys in town. He got it all inherited to him. These guys have tried everything they possibly could to shut this business down through zoning regulations, through defamation lawsuits. Somehow I'm still kicking. But it's because they can't stand, there's two reasons. They can't stand to have somebody with such a loud progressive voice in a place that's so gosh darn conservative. Because you know what? It makes a difference. If people actually, Wisconsin's always close. Even here, it's 40% Democrat, 60% Republican. That means it's 2/3. So even here, it matters how many people turn out to vote. And if you're a Democrat and you think you're completely outgunned, you just try to avoid politics altogether. You go to the bar, you don't want to talk to anybody about politics because you don't want to get in a fight, and so you become shy. You hold your tongue, and you know what? Sometimes you're so disinterested you just don't even go and vote at all. Because how could my world around me is so red and so redneck that I'm just not going to vote. So what we've done since we started raising a ruckus here, in that last election, Biden only won by 20,000 votes. And in the 34th Assembly District, which includes this district, Biden won by 5,000 more votes than Hillary Clinton had 4 years earlier. Which means when you got a statewide, you only win by 20,000 votes. This district itself might have put Biden over the top, or at least it helped. So which means it is pivotal that if you live in a small town in rural Wisconsin that's all red, you still got to give people courage, make people at least feel there's somebody fighting for them, at least somebody. And so that's why I'm so dangerous to these Republicans in this part of the state, and that's why they want to shut me down. And they're doing a darn good job, but it will never happen. Because we will win. We have the law on our side, and we are on the right side of history. And the second thing that they'll never shut down is creativity. Because weirdly or not, if your amygdala, which is your fear thing in the snail part of your brain, you have sex with this part of your brain, and you also have fear. So one part of it is good, but the other part of it is bad. But their amygdalas are bigger. So fear rules their world. Creative people. You can't be creative if you're scared all the time. Your fight or flight mechanism. So every time they try to shut me down, I just superimpose their faces on the Three Stooges and put a 7-foot sign in my beer garden. And everybody laughs and they look like fucking assholes. And so whatever, in the course of human history, as soon as you try to stifle music, art, creativity, it bites you back in the ass and makes you look like an asshole. And that's why they will never beat the Minocqua Brewing Company. I just made myself a little emotional with that. So let's pour this last one called Woke. This is, believe it or not, I got drunk one day. And I was at the Beer and Wine Festival in Madison, Wisconsin, and I met the guy who owned Rusty Dog Coffee, who is not he's as liberal as me, but he's not as outspoken as I am. And he's like, I'd love to put coffee in your beer. I love what you stand for. And somehow or another, I was drunk enough to just say, well, let's just do coffee, you know. So we came up with, we have ground coffee, we have this is nitrogen infused cold brew, and it's saved my bacon because I can around the country. It's much harder to get booze around the country, but it's much easier to send coffee. So my mail order of coffee has kind of become part of this in a big way, part of the Minocqua Brewing Company. It's all because Rusty Dog has cheapened their prices for me, so I can sell it at a normal price. But it's gourmet coffee, best coffee roasters in Madison by the Isthmus magazine, 3 years running. And so, because of them, we have a whole line of coffee called Woke, because why wouldn't you call it Woke? It's caffeinated, you know. But the reason I want to end with this is not only to give you a little caffeine so you get out of your alcoholic stupor, but I also wanted to say, we talked about federal, state, and local politics. The one thing we haven't talked about is this election in November, and like I said before, you know, we have now is a time. Wisconsinites, and I in particular, I grew up to be very shy. I grew up to be passive aggressive, like all Midwesterners are. We were raised to get along with everybody and not fight and not have sharp elbows, and which means that we don't talk about politics enough in society. We're taught to not talk about it. And the only way that we can beat back what will be a fascist country if Wisconsin doesn't get those 20,000 votes again, because that's all we're going to win by if we win, the only way is that we have to start shouting and yelling and fighting. And if anything you learned today is that, you know, it doesn't hurt. Sometimes you get bruised when you fight, but also, you know, it's worth it. It's worth it. Even in business, sometimes you can make an entire business out of fighting back, even if you're in the minority or you're in, you know, even if the odds seem crazy. So we all got to fight. If you're from Wisconsin and you're going back home to a rural area, you cannot be shy in the next 6 months. All right. Thank you, everybody.